Faith was brilliant. It was like Elvis Presley again with the leather outfit and stuff. And the fact that he'd made all these dance records and came out with Faith, which was kind of like a rock song, was just a brilliant move.
People in my school who only listened to rock music had that album. People who only listened to rap music had that album.
I mean, it was massive in America, it was massive through Europe. I wasn't surprised when it made him a very rich man.
I deluded myself. I knew I was moving into a more adult period of making music, but I kind of deluded myself that I was not going to attract a whole new generation of young girls with the whole Faith image. If you look at it, you're like, well, what do you expect? You're waving your ass at the camera and... It's quite a nice ass, so.
Faith was a #1 album in Britain for 1 week. It was a #1 album in America for 12 weeks. It sold 10 million albums, and he had 4 #1 singles, and a #2 and a #5 off of that album, Faith. He was the biggest pop star of 1988.
There you go, I was off on bad trip #2, really. I honestly believed that they had overrated Faith, because that's what happens in America when you become the hot thing, I suppose. Suddenly people were writing things that I just thought, hold on a minute, you know what I mean? I know it's not that good. That kind of hysteria coming at you 4 nights a week, and then to come off stage and find that your security have been fighting with your friends because your friends want to take you out on the town.
I think the Faith period was the only time I thought, oh, he's being a pop star. He's living it up, the ego's there, and he's got the entourage around him.
Even your friends don't feel like they're dealing with the same entity that they were at home. And that starts to really play with your head.
I mean, it was just a bit surreal, actually, because we spent a lot of time in Los Angeles, and I mean, it was in the superstar league, you know.
I was intelligent enough to know that this was the wrong road in terms of if I was looking for happiness, I should not be trying to catch up with Michael Jackson or Madonna or whatever, which was absolutely what I was intent on doing as a British star.
Jets, women, money. It was a fantastic ride, an amazing ride.
But I don't think there's any way I could have controlled my ego enough to have stopped me exploring the possibility of being the biggest selling artist in the world.
For favorite males, soul, R&B, Bobby Brown, Michael Jackson, George Michael.
The album of the year is Faith. George Michael.
George Michael!
George Michael!
It's a very intense thing to go through for 10 months, which is what effectively I did with Faith. And by the end of it, I felt like I was going insane, it has to be said. It was, oh my God, I'm a massive star, right? It was like, oh my God, I'm a massive star and I think I may be a puff. What am I going to do? This is not going to end well, you know?
I'd just like to say...
that was the turning point for me. That was the point at which I had to negotiate some new relationship with celebrity that wasn't going to destroy me, you know.
The decision was taken in 1990 not to promote. He felt that if he was to do so, was to carry on the bandwagon, as it were, that he would burn out, and he had to get off it. And he explained to the record company that that was something he just had to do. And whilst most of the world accepted it, America couldn't.
I mean, I was very honest with Sony. One of the reasons we went to court was because I was so honest with them about what I didn't intend to do for Listen Without Prejudice, that I felt that if they weren't prepared to deal with that they would tell me, but they didn't, you know. So we sat at lunch and everybody told me what a fantastic album it was, and then came back to New York and told everybody that this was George Michael's Nebraska, right? Which was Bruce Springsteen's 80s album, which he recorded on a 4-track and sold nothing because it was completely introspective. Now, I just presented them with Listen Without Prejudice, and I'm sorry, but it is not Nebraska.
There was a basic falling out over the philosophy of not promoting the record and not providing a video for the first single, and that was what it was all. That's what it stemmed from.
I was just naive. I was totally naive and thought that if I was open and honest and truthful, that it would pay dividends. As it turned out, one of my better ideas, you know, getting 5 absolutely gorgeous supermodels that people still want to look at today. If you're going to say to your record company, look, I'm not going to be in this video, I'd say that's a fairly good consolation prize, really. You know, those 5 gorgeous babes. By that time, in America, the relationship was already over, you know. So freedom peaked at 12, I think, in the States. Normally I'd be jumping up and down about it, you know, be really pissed off, but I was just back from Brazil and something amazing had just happened to me, so all of this seemed relatively unimportant at the time. On the night of the first Rock in Rio concert in Maracana Stadium, 160,000 people, it was going to be the biggest audience I'd ever played in front of. But at the front of this 160,000 people, there was this guy over on the right-hand side of the stage that would just fixed me with this look. And he was so cute, I was so distracted by him that I stayed away from that end of the stage for a while. And that was Anselmo. That really was the moment my life changed. It was just like, wow, I've met someone I actually think I'm going to fall in love with, rather than just want their body for a while, you know. For the first 6 months of our relationship, at least, I felt better than I had possibly in my entire life. It's very hard to be proud of your own sexuality when it hasn't brought you any joy. Once it is associated with joy and love, it's easy to be proud of who you are. People will find this hard to believe, but Anselmo and I didn't hide. You know, we hid to the degree that I was living in LA, but that's hardly hiding from the media. You know, you're a phone call away as far as the Sun or the Mirror is concerned. He was just very funny, very full of energy, very loving. And I think Anselmo was the first time I think I really loved someone selflessly, you know, where it really was about them. But while everything was okay with Sony for a while, the single with Elton obviously did really well. I was very happy. I guess it was a calm before the storm. I was about to become a grown-up, and I wasn't prepared for it. I remember the moment that he told me about the test he'd been advised to have. I remember him leaving the house, and to this day I remember looking at the sky and saying, "Don't you dare do this to me." Anselmo had the test over the Christmas period in Brazil. I went home to my family for Christmas and sat at the Christmas table, not knowing whether in fact he was, and whether my partner, the people sitting around the table did not know about, not knowing whether this man I was in love with was terminally ill, and therefore not knowing whether I potentially was terminally ill. And you're sitting there at Christmas, and it was possibly the loneliest time in my life, I think. But there you go, that's life, you know, that's the chance you take, isn't it? You know, and definitely, unfortunately, in 1991, that was the chance you took as a gay man, for sure, you know.
The music world has been paying tribute to Freddie Mercury, the lead singer with the rock group Queen. He died last night, just 24 hours after saying he had AIDS.
I remember my publicist calling me to tell me that Freddie Mercury had died and that they wanted a quote from me. And I remember I was trying to give her the quote and I was crying, and you know, she just thought, I mean, bless him, I was really sad that Freddie had passed away. But of course I was crying about something else entirely. At that stage, and for many months, I was kind of sworn to secrecy by Anselmo. I went out there knowing that I had to do two things. I had to honour Freddie Mercury, and I had to pray for Anselmo. So it was so much to me, all in that one performance. I'm so proud of the fact that I held on to that feeling because I just wanted to die inside. It was just overwhelming for me, and I think what that did was turned on one of the best performances of my career, you know. There was one last moment where Freddie and Anselmo's paths seemingly crossed. I was in LA, and I remember I was on the floor signing the artwork for 5 Live, which was the charity record that was based on my performances from the tribute concert. When the phone rang and I was told that Anselmo's best friend in Brazil was on the phone, you know, then it all goes blurry for a long time, you know. The whole process of knowing and waiting and then grieving, that was about 4 years.
If I was weak, forgive me.
Is it possible to have happy times during that?
Oh yeah, I tried to make that time for him happy, you know. I think it was, actually.
Because I'm sure a lot of people run away from that situation.
Yeah, well, it wasn't an option for me to run away, you know. It wasn't an option to me. Even if I'd wanted to run away, I'm not the kind of person that could have lived with myself, you know. I think, to some degree, the Sony court case was a perfectly good place to put my anger. This bloody 6-month case that went on, you know, I used to go and run on the treadmill every day for an hour before I went to court, and run on the treadmill for an hour after I went to court, and play squash and do everything I could to get rid of all this anger and fear. But the best place for it was court number 1, really.
One of Britain's most successful pop singers, George Michael, is today asking a High Court judge to declare his recording contract null and void.
George Michael's counsel told the court this case is not about money.
I will never know if Sony and I would have ended up in court had Anselmo not become ill.
Record companies are just glorified bank managers who wear jeans to work, and they lend you money, and you know the interest is ridiculous, and very often they don't live up to their promises.
I think George was right to stand up for his, you know, what he believed in, you know, and it's tough when you're treated by the record company like a chattel, you know, something that they own.
I was doing something that wasn't just justified in terms of me as an individual who'd signed a record contract at 18 that was completely ridiculous and been coerced into signing that.
I think that what he was saying probably had a lot of validity to it, and I was kind of behind the scenes, and to me, he should have won.
I remember seeing him on the news and it just all looked so scary, and I thought, why is he putting himself through all that?
I remember sitting with my lawyer, Tony Russell, being told, what do you want to do? Basically, are we going to go for it? And of course they were itching for me to go for it. And I remember looking my lawyer in the eye and thinking, well, you might as well. What the fuck else are you going to do for the next couple of years other than be terrified?
I think it was about 7 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, the guy just sat down and said, look, well, you've lost. And it was like, that was it.
The pop star George Michael loses his High Court battle to break away from his record company Sony.
His parents were in the crowded court which heard that he had lost and Sony had won on all counts.
I do remember being absolutely gutted. Not that I'd lost, but that the record companies, who absolutely were outside reasonable law, there was absolutely nothing that required them to pull their socks up in any way.
I have no right to resign. In fact, there is no such thing as resignation for an artist in the music industry. Effectively, you sign a piece of paper at the beginning of your career and you're expected to live with that decision, good or bad, for the rest of your professional life.
OK, I think there was an inevitability to the end of youth culture as we loved it, you know. But I think if artists from the early 90s on really had been masters of their own destiny, there is a possibility that Pop Idol wouldn't have ruined everything.
Despite the fact that we won the court case, we lost a fantastic artist.
Would I have been angry enough to take them on? I have a feeling the answer to that is probably no, actually, if I'm really honest.